Thank you very much. We may be seated. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Vincent Magwenya. I'm the President's spokesperson, and I'll be driving this afternoon's proceedings. Mr. President, the Minister in the Presidency, Minister Nchabeni, Deputy Ministers present, Members of Parliament, Professor David Everett, Chairperson of the Statistics Council, the Statistician General, Mr. Risenga Maluleke, colleagues from the media, ladies and gentlemen. Let me extend a very warm welcome to the Union Buildings as we are all gathered here to witness the launch and presentation of the Census 2022 report to the President of the Republic and indeed to the nation. The Census 2022 was the fourth population and housing count in post-apartheid South Africa, the first being conducted in 1996 and the subsequent censuses conducted in 2001 and 2011. The population and housing census was conducted in February of 2022, will provide comprehensive data on the population size, demographic trends, and other service delivery related information. Before we start, I'd like to just point out that our program today is divided in two parts. The first part being the presentation of the Census 22 report as stated. The second part of the program will then be led by Status A, which will provide an opportunity for more in-depth engagement with members of the media present. The work of Status A is guided by the Statistics Act. The purpose of the Act is to advance the planning, production, analysis, documentation, storage, dissemination, and use of official and other statistics. Amongst other elements of the Act, it also provides for the establishment of the Statistics Council, which is chaired by Professor David Everett, who I'd like to now invite to the podium to take us through the contribution of the Council to this process. Let's please give him a warm welcome.
Thank you very much. I have to say it's slightly off-putting seeing this robot clenching its fists every 2 minutes. I hope it's not something I'm about to say. It laughs at jokes as well. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. President, Minister, SG, the Statistics Council is appointed in terms of Section 8.1 of the Statistics Act. The Council was appointed by the responsible Minister in the Presidency on the 1st of January 2019 for a term of 3 years. The term of this Council was later extended until the end of September 2023 to ensure that we could sign off on the public release of Census, which is what we're doing today. The duties and powers of Council are specified in Section 13 of the Act. It states that our job is to independently advise the relevant Minister in the Presidency and the Statistician General or any organ of state that produces statistics. We also have to promote and safeguard official statistics, support the coordination of statistical activities, and ensure an environment which is supportive of the collection, production, dissemination, and use of official statistics. Censuses are a principal means of collecting essential information on the public. Its spatial distribution, age and sex structure, and other key social and economic characteristics. Census data are vital for social and economic planning, policy development, implementation, and evaluation. As said, we've had 4 population censuses since the advent of democracy. The population census of 2022 is the first digital census that was run in South Africa. In other words, you could answer through various modes, and there was no paper involved at any stage of the process. And we do recommend, we commend Stats South Africa for these innovations and recommend that they carry on into the future. But we have to note that COVID-19 profoundly affected the planning and execution of the census. It led to a year-long delay, this was meant to be Census 2021, in implementing the census, during which staff were only able to work remotely. It also required changes in the enumeration methods, caused some unique delays and challenges, such as in enumerator training, and influenced data collection efforts. COVID-19 also created challenges for enumerators, given the understandable health risk and anxieties in the population. In addition, Census 22 took place after the mid-year election campaigns, the unrest in KwaZulu and Gauteng, and the major flooding that occurred, all of which created an extremely challenging terrain in which to carry out the census. Despite these obstacles, the census team adapted to the situation and continued this work during the pandemic and subsequent events. So, the main findings. Council does not engage directly with the census data, nor does it have prior sight of census or any other data that is released by Stats SA. Council relies on the insights of a team of preeminent and independent local and international statistical experts who rigorously tested all aspects of the census in order for us to take a position on the census as a whole. The team of experts, who fairly obviously do access the data, assess the methodologies used, the training and fieldwork, the reliability of the post-enumeration survey, the robustness of the variables in the census. The main findings of the assessment managed by Council are as follows. Council holds the view that the results of the census will be useful for planning government service delivery, its core function. This view is informed by the full team of consultants managed by Council. The census and post-enumeration survey were conducted in line with international best practice. Council recommends the two following. Because we had to extend the enumeration period, it didn't all happen on census night. We had to keep it open. We've just said make sure that there is the possibility of forgetting who was in your house on that night may increase as you move away from the 2nd of February date. So just check that. We've said just model it to make sure it's not affecting the data and to manage the high levels of unspecified, what you and I would call no answer, which is an unavoidable outcome when you go digital and people are able to do this in their laptop at home. They can simply skip a question they don't want to answer, and in this case, did. Council, informed by the experts, finds that fertility and migration indicators derived from the census are plausible, and I think that's particularly important. A cautionary note, and we have suggested cautionary notes be applied by the SG and by Stats SA. A cautionary note relates to data on the distribution of deaths of household members in Census 2022. Estimates of mortality should be based on data from childhood and parental survival, excuse me, which yields plausible estimates. Council recommends that Stats SA do not release the household death data until data confrontation with vital registration data is undertaken. In other words, we're saying do not release that data. Most of the service delivery indicators compare well with other censuses and surveys conducted by Stats SA. There are some concerns with certain variables, and Council suggests cautionary warnings be issued to with data on the following. One is the reliability of water supply and interruptions to water supply due to simply the high level of unspecified, in other words, no answer. The second one is questions relating to the ownership of assets, particularly refrigerators, electric or gas stoves, and vacuum cleaners. These may seem small, but they are part of how you construct your lifestyle, your LSMs. And so they are important variables. And again, there are high levels of unspecified. People just didn't answer it, and so we just don't know what the answer is. However, the main recommendation is that in view of the findings of the independent assessment managed by Council, we recommend to the Minister and the Statistician General that Census 2022 is fit for purpose, and Council recommends that the phased release of the results be undertaken, in other words, the mortality data being the phased part, be undertaken in terms of Section 13 of the Statistics Act. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Everett, for that overview. The Statistics Act also provides for a Statistician General as head of Statistics South Africa, who is responsible for the collection, production, and dissemination of official and other statistics. This includes the conducting of a census of the population, as well as the coordination among producers of statistics. And the gentleman who shoulders this responsibility is Mr. Risenga Maluleka, who I would like to now invite to the podium. Mr. SG.
Thank you, Mr. Program Director. When I got a clap of hands before I came to the podium, I was saying that it's only the statement we had from the Chair of Council. So we still have to get the numbers. Let's wait, we'll clap hands after the numbers. Let me take note. Let me take note of the President of the Republic of South Africa, Mr. Matamela Ramaphosa, and indeed the Minister in the Presidency, Ms. Khumbudzo Nchabeni, who the statistics function reports to, and the two Deputy Ministers in the Presidency, Deputy Minister Morolong and Deputy Minister Mutaung, and Deputy Minister Morolong, who has a delegated function of dealing with matters statistics with our arrangements with the minister. And let me mention that with that responsibility, let me take note again of the Chair of the Statistics Council, members of Parliament here, and indeed members of the Public Service, the DG in the Presidency, Ms. Baleni is here, and I haven't recognized others, and let's say staff members. I have a responsibility of making sure that we talk about the numbers. But I would like to introduce to all of us Melokutle. As a statistical organization, and Melokutle is standing in front of us here. As a statistical agency, we had to take into account the use of statistics in naming Melo. Melo Kutle is the most popular name, female baby, that was coming out of our 2021. So every year in recorded live births, what popular names all over the country, by province, the most popular surnames, and we make them available. And of course, it's quite interesting when you use surnames, Mr. President. There's a lot of interest in saying in some provinces, oh, we know that we are responsible for increasing the population in this province. So there are a lot of interesting things. And as statisticians, we deal with everything about life, about entities. So at this point in time, let me indicate to the media that we are lifting the embargo. I know the media really wants to start showing the... I know our engagement all the time is that when we meet, we first brief you, and then we say embargo lifted. It's because we want to be interactive. So here is Melo in front of us.
Greetings, Statistician General of South Africa.
Melo, please have manners. Kindly greet everyone. Melo, will you kindly load the Census 2022 launch presentation?
I will do that gladly, SG, but I think you're forgetting something. Shouldn't we first tell the story of how the count was done?
Oh, Melo, thank you very much for reminding me. Let us talk about how the count was done. Will you please load the video of how the count was done?
As the sun rises from the mountains of Mpumalanga, South Africa rises with strength and hope for a better future and improved socio-economic climate. This is why a census is critical in playing a role in advancing the aspirations of the majority of South Africans. In 2022, South Africa conducted its fourth population census since 1996. A painstaking undertaking, the census provides a true reflection of the country's socio-economic dynamics, its growth and its development trajectory over time.
Since 1994, we have had 4 population and housing censuses in South Africa. One in 1996, then in 2001, followed by the 2011 one. And indeed, this census that we conducted in February 2022. The scale of a census is incomparable to any other project in the country. and consequently, detailed and accurate planning and testing is essential to effectively execute such a project. We set out to count everyone within the borders of South Africa without omission or duplication.
The people of Newcastle and all other villages, townships, and towns in KwaZulu-Natal were counted. Communities across the province of Mpumalanga were counted. The Basotho people of Putadichaba and the entire province of the Free State were counted. Nwanzeku and the entire province of Limpopo were counted during the census. Mthatha in the Eastern Cape, including Komani, and the entire province participated in the census and were successfully counted. The people of Pampierstad and the rest of the Northern Cape were counted. Western Cape and its citizens were counted. Sandton and the rest of Gauteng were counted. And the people of Dinokana and the rest of the Northwest Province were counted.
This turned out to be one of the toughest challenges due to the complexities in the environment, including COVID-19 and how load shedding impacted on some of our processes. Indeed, I can't overstate the importance of a census for the country. Census 2022 data provides insights on living conditions of South Africans in terms of the number of households, average household sizes, and the type of dwelling structures they live in, as well as access to water, availability of essential services and facilities, as well as access to internet. This information is critical in understanding and addressing development challenges at all levels of geography and community.
As the world enters the fourth industrial revolution, Census 2022 became South Africa's first successful digital population count. A multi-mode data collection approach was adopted and used in the collection of information from respondents. These were face-to-face interviews, telephonic interviews. 100,000 field workers were brought on board to administer the census questionnaire. A multi-mode data collection method became an advantage in conducting the census in the COVID-19 pandemic space as strict regulations had been introduced. Censuses provide reliable data at various levels of planning. Information collected during the census process plays a critical role in planning at the national, provincial, and municipal levels by providing policymakers with the information required to formulate rational policies and implement service delivery.
For the next 10 years, this information is going to be important for all our data users. Here I'm talking about our stakeholders in the three spheres of government in the form of policymakers, and indeed development partners, civil society organizations, the private sector, researchers, and the general public. In closing, I would like to thank each and everyone who made Census 2022 a success. Our field staff, Census Project Management Team, the Post-Enumeration Team, as well as members of civil society who opened their doors to be counted. I must emphasize that our biggest thumbs goes to members of civil society, because without them we would not have been successful. I thank you. Ngiyabonga. Enkosi. Danki. Ndihela kwami. Now, Mr. President, that we have heard the story about how the count was done, we now want to hear the story about the numbers. Melo, please load the Census 2022 presentation. Indeed, if we go to the next slide, Melo, we are saying that in 1996 we used pen and paper. 2001 we used pen and paper and went straight into scanning technology. So was 2011, my apologies. In 2022, we had 3 modes: face-to-face, telephonic, and web-assisted, and all of these were digital applications. Melo, let's go to the next slide. And indeed, as we look at this, we are saying that COVID-19 propelled us to go into multimodal approach. And as we did this, we were affected in both census planning and implementation. One of the biggest challenges is that the 10th October, and by coincidence, Mr. President, we were given this day, used to be a census night. And that's when we would go into field, 1996, 2001, and 2011. But as of now, 2022, we had to, and that would mean that there are so many challenges. October was chosen largely because we know the provinces where they are schooling in. But in February, some hadn't returned. And of course, even when we extended the period, the reference night still would not include some of them. So these are some of the data issues we will have to live with. We have had some provinces coming and say, Mr. SG, we have a number of students. Take this data and include it. We cannot. It has to be contained. It cannot be influenced by any other approach. It has to be done by State SA. So let us look at quality measures in the next slide, Melo. As we look at quality measures, we are saying that we had to build in validation rules to make sure that we monitor our enumeration throughout, minimal editing and imputations, and make sure that we had an independent team of experts. Council had their team. We also had our team that assessed and indeed data processing. And in the process, validation through census processes that occurred in the past. Next slide, Melo. What happened? We can tell the nation our collection rates. So in every province, in the Free State, our collection rates, that is the number of dwelling units we were able to reach, set at 98%, all the way to the Western Cape at 86%. Having said this, we could arrive in a dwelling and find that it's vacant. We could arrive in a dwelling and find that there is nobody, especially in situations where you find you have single households and the neighbors are not supposed to respond on their behalf. So these are some of the things we had to deal with. And now let us look at the post-enumeration survey. Next slide, Melo. In the post-enumeration survey, this is an independent survey that deals with the quality in terms of evaluation of the census, to deal with coverage error, content error, and indeed to give us an informed basis, a statistically informed basis for adjusting the census count. Next slide, Melo. Now, when we come to this slide, we talk about the undercount. I want to say that when we talk about the undercount, everyone starts to worry. We are talking about having reached 98% in the Free State, and now we are saying that the person's undercount is sitting at 20% in the 20.95%. But let us look at the Western Cape, 35.58% at person's level, 36.3% at household level. Eastern Cape, 32.4% and 27% all the way to Limpopo. They are not ranked in terms of the standing. It's the way we have listed them. And the undercount for South Africa is 31.06%. And we use the persons as the headline undercount. But I don't want us to spend time on the undercount, because when we talk about the undercount, everyone says, these are the people that have been missed. We use this using the post-enumeration survey to adjust the population census accordingly. So the adjustments for provinces won't be the same. That is why you look at the provinces with the higher undercounts. It means they will have higher adjustments when we are dealing with adjustments out of what we got and what we are adjusting. And this is done in line with the United Nations methods. And that makes sure that we have the quality of our data guaranteed, and the veracity of our data to stand the test of time, so that in future, even 400 years from now, those who will use our data will know that one day we gathered in this room and our data can still stand the test of time. Now, let us look at the next slide, Melo. we looked mainly inequality in population group, sex, age group, marital status, relationship to the head of the household, country of birth. And of course, we looked at an aggregated index of consistency, and we are pleased to indicate that no characteristics showed a higher aggregated index of consistency. That is, they were low or moderate. Next slide, Melo. We know how much was done in terms of the counting, in terms of the people that we have missed, that we could not find even when we arrived at their households. Now, Melo, can you tell us what the total population of South Africa is as of the 2nd of February 2022?
No, I cannot. I am not the Statistician General.
South Africa as of the 2nd of February. And of course, we can show how our population grew over, sitting at 44.8 million. In 2001 to 2011, we grew by by 15.5%, straight into 51.8 million. Look at the provinces, Melo. Let's go into the next slide. Let us look at the provinces, which was number 5 in 1996. 2001, the same. It came after KwaZulu-Natal, Gauteng, Eastern Cape, and Limpopo. In 2011, it overtook Limpopo. And of course, now it has overtaken the Eastern Cape. It's sitting at 7.4 million, followed by the Eastern Cape, sitting at 7.2 million, 6.4 million, let me indicate, 7.4 million is the Western Cape, Eastern Cape 7.2 million, Limpopo 6.4 million, Mpumalanga 5.1 million, the Northwest 3.8 million, 3 million goes to the Free State, and the Northern Cape, as usual, it has the largest landmass. It's sitting at 1.4 million. Let us go to the next slide, Melo. We want to talk about demographics. And let us go again to the next slide, Melo. Indeed, let us look at black Africans. They are sitting at 55 million. That is, they account for 81.4% of the population. Colored population group, 5.1 million, accounting for 8.1%. And indeed, let us look at the white population group, 4.5 million, accounting for 7.3%. And the Indian Asians, 1.7 million, accounting for 2.7%, and those who didn't specify at 200,000. But of interest is the white population group. When we look at 2011, they were sitting at 9%. They have now declined to 7.3%. Now, let us go into the next slide, Melo. The next slide gives us age cohorts. Children 0 to 14 years sitting at 16.4 million, accounting for 26.4%. Young people 15 to 34 years, accounting for 21.6 million, sitting at 34.8%. Adults 35 to 59 years, accounting for 8 million, sitting at 29%. The elderly, the 60 years plus, sitting at 6.1 million, accounting for 9.8%. Melo, we want to talk about how many official languages that you speak.
As a recent immigrant to South Africa, I only speak English. I am hopeful one day I will speak all 12 official South African languages.
Melo, will you then take us to the next slide so that we can talk about the languages? I want us to look at the map first. When we look at the map, we might think that Afrikaans is the most spoken language because we see the color for Afrikaans in the Northern Cape and the Western Cape. But we know that the Northern Cape is sparsely populated. It doesn't have much people. So now we want to start with the most spoken language. That is isiZulu, 24.4%. And we can see it's predominantly in KwaZulu-Natal, a bit in Mpumalanga, and of course some parts of the Free State. We can see it, we can look at the blue color. isiXhosa, largely in the Eastern Cape, a bit in KwaZulu-Natal, a bit in the Northern Cape. followed by Afrikaans, sitting at 10.6%, as we can see, the Northern Cape and the Western Cape. Let us look at Sepedi, mainly in Limpopo, sitting at 10%. Let us look at English, sitting at 8.7%. And of course, let us look at Setswana, mainly in the Northwest, sitting at 8.3%. Sesotho, mainly in the Free State, 7.8%. Xitsonga, mainly in Limpopo, 4.7%. Siswati, 2.8%, mainly in Mpumalanga. Chivenda, sitting at 2.5%, mainly in Limpopo. Isindebele, 1.7%, mainly country where they are showing. Now, let us proceed. We talk about migration, Melo. In the next slide, I will ask Melo to take us again to the next slide. In the next slide, we are saying that Gauteng received a net amount of 400,000 between 2011 and 2022. And we can see it was followed by the Western Cape, followed by Mpumalanga, followed by the Northern Cape. The other provinces in the form of the Free State, KwaZulu-Natal, Eastern Cape, and Limpopo had a positive negative net migration. It means that they actually over time are showing reversals. Their population is growing, but in terms of the movements, they are showing that they haven't gained as much as we can see in Gauteng. Now, we want to see largely in the two provinces where people are moving to. Next slide, Melo. We can see that in Gauteng, the population growth is driven by people who come from outside South Africa. Actually, about 50% of people who come from outside South Africa choose Gauteng as their destination. Internally, the population of Gauteng, the biggest contribution from provinces comes from Limpopo, followed by KwaZulu-Natal, followed by the Northwest and the Eastern Cape. Whereas when we look at the Western Cape on the right-hand side, we can see that they were the same between the two who came from Zimbabwe were sitting at 38.1% and now sitting at 45.5%. And of course, coming from Mozambique, 22%, 2011, now sitting at 18.7%.